Hello, everyone. Have you ever wondered, can a best friend, the one who walked with us through the most beautiful years, be the very person who betrays us from the shadows? Can love withstand the cracks of broken trust? And is the heart wide enough to forgive when the truth is too bitter to bear? The story of James and Dieppe takes you through a journey of love, pain, and the difficult choice between forgiveness and justice. They once believed their greatest enemy was John, the man who tried to destroy everything James had built. But no, the most painful blow came from the one they trusted most. Tung, a close friend, someone considered family, who was secretly working for that very enemy. A cruel truth comes to light, a wound so deep it doesn't just bleed. It shakes the very foundation of the love James and Dieppe had built over the years. James, rational and strong, now faces a heart torn between broken trust and the woman he loves. Dieppe, gentle yet resilient, must choose her path when past wounds and present truths collide. This story is not just a gripping drama, but a gentle whisper about the true meaning of love, friendship, and trust. If you've ever loved, trusted, and been hurt, you may see yourself in James and Dieppe's journey. And if you're facing betrayal right now, this story might just help you see it all through the eyes of a braver heart. Don't forget to follow the channel to join us in the episodes ahead, where each knot will slowly unravel, and maybe, just maybe, the questions buried deep in your heart will find their answer. When the misunderstanding reached its peak, the love between James and Dieppe began to sway under the silent storm meticulously orchestrated from the shadows. Hidden schemes, unintentional glances, and words left unsaid. Together, they struck like a storm, crashing down on a love once believed to be unshakable. James felt as though he had plummeted into an abyss when he saw Dieppe, the woman he loved more than life itself, sitting on the back of Tung's motorcycle. That image hit him like a silent blow, landing squarely on the fragile trust already weakened by days of doubt and distance. His heart ached to the point of suffocation, but what James didn't know was that just moments before, Dieppe had accidentally seen him sitting across the street with his secretary. She didn't lash out. She wasn't jealous, but a quiet wave of disappointment swept over her heart, enough to make her turn back, to seek James and find the truth. Yet James, consumed by heartbreak, had already disappeared. He didn't want Dieppe to see the weakness in his eyes. He was afraid that if they faced each other now, he wouldn't have the strength to hide the pain roaring inside him. From a shadowed corner across the street, Tung, his gaze cold as steel, watched it all unfold. He didn't say a word, didn't move an inch, but the faint smirk tugging at his lips revealed everything. Satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. Every piece of deception had fallen perfectly into place. Dieppe stood still in the middle of the street, her heart suffocating beneath a whirlwind of emotions she couldn't name. When she couldn't find James, she slowly turned to leave. Each step felt heavy, dragging along a storm of sorrow in her soul. Her face turned pale, her eyes vacant, and her thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and silent pain. In that very moment, it became clear. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a turning point, where love stood trembling at the crossroads of trust and betrayal. Dieppe still couldn't understand why the man who once looked at her with such gentle eyes who once held her hand through every storm in life, would suddenly step back, cold and silent, as if he had never been there at all. There was no goodbye, no message to explain. James disappeared from her days like a passing dream, leaving behind an empty void too vast for anything to fill. She had tried calling, texting, reaching out in every way she could, but all she ever received in return was a silence colder than the longest rainy nights of her life. Time and again, she asked herself, what did I do wrong? What could I have done to make him walk away? But the answer remained a silent mystery. To muffle the ache clawing at her heart, Dieppe threw herself into work, as if keeping busy could dull the pain. She took on more projects, stayed late at the office, even brought files home just to avoid sitting across from the empty chair at the dinner table, or catching a whiff of the faint cologne still lingering on the shirt he once left behind. Every morning, she glanced at her phone with a flicker of hope, only to feel it extinguished moments later. Every night, she curled up with her pillow and whispered his name in her mind like a habit too deeply rooted to break. Some nights she cried, silently, tears soaking her pillow, never letting out a single sob, because she knew, no matter how much she cried, it wouldn't bring back someone who had already turned away. No matter how strong she tried to be, her heart couldn't pretend to forget. Her footsteps remained steady as she walked into work each day, but the sorrow never left her eyes. The quiet sadness of someone carrying a sky full of unsaid words. What Dieppe didn't know was that James was still watching over her from afar, that he too was hurting, tormented every single day, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he chose to disappear, to protect her, to keep her far from the dangers quietly lurking behind the curtain of truth. But Dieppe could never have known that, and like anyone in love, what she longed for wasn't promises of forever, but something far simpler, a reason why. A hug, tight and true, just to know that even in one fleeting moment, the love they shared had been real. That night, the sky seemed to unleash its fury upon the earth. The torrential rain didn't just drench the empty streets, it poured straight into the cracked heart of James, a man standing at the darkest crossroads of his life. He leaned against a wall, cold as stone, his eyes staring into the distance, though in truth, he was looking into the past, where the most beautiful memories had now become blades turning back to pierce him. Tung, his sworn brother, the one who had stood shoulder to shoulder with him through countless trials, was now the very one who had pushed him into the abyss of betrayal. No one could have imagined that during the long war James waged against the greatest enemy of his life, John, it was Tung who served as the enemy's hidden hand, a serpent raised by trust and kindness that turned around and sank its fangs into the one who gave it everything. James said nothing. He didn't scream. He didn't rage. Because sometimes pain grows so immense that it renders you silent. It doesn't explode. It seeps out slowly, draining your spirit bit by bit, like rain dripping endlessly on a decaying rooftop. And tonight, every drop of rain felt like blood dripping from his heart, a heart that had once been brave, once believed, and now lay shattered. Betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was destruction. Tung had handed over James's entire plan to John, shattering every strategy he had spent years constructing. And, worse still, Tung was the one behind the kidnapping of Tu Dieppe, the woman James had cherished above all else. When the truth hit, James nearly collapsed. No one could imagine the agony of realizing the person you trusted to your very core had helped your enemy harm the one you love. It felt like someone had wrapped a steel band around his chest and pulled tight. He couldn't breathe, not because of the cold rain, but because of the storm howling inside. Tung was captured. The interrogation room was stark and cold. A single light beamed down on the once familiar face, now just a broken shell. Tung didn't fight, didn't justify. He simply bowed his head, and then the tears came, not from fear, but from the hopelessness of a soul begging for redemption. "I was wrong," Tung whispered. He confessed that John had threatened him, coerced him, and in the end, the lure of power and his own weakness had dragged him into the shadows. But James didn't need excuses, because some wounds don't fester from lack of healing. They're simply too deep to close. James stood behind the one-way glass. He watched silently. The emotions inside him were tangled. No longer black and white, no longer right or wrong. Only one question echoed endlessly in his mind. Is justice a place where forgiveness belongs? In that moment, James was no longer just a man betrayed. He was a soul teetering between two cliffs, one of hatred, the other of memories so beautiful they ached. And there, in the sound of falling rain and under the hush of a single light, love, trust, and betrayal wove themselves into a mournful symphony, one no heart ever wishes to hear again. James had asked himself hundreds of times in silence, "Can I forgive?" Forgiveness, he gradually realized, wasn't a gift for the one who caused pain, but a liberation for the one who suffered. It wasn't about forgetting, nor was it an easy nod of approval. It was a long, winding, and treacherous path, one where a person must walk through the darkness of grief, anger, and betrayal to rediscover the purest part of their soul. And on that journey, James didn't just confront Tung, the man who was once like a brother. He also had to confront himself. The pain he never named, the wounds he buried, and the silent turmoil he carried for years. The betrayal felt like a blade, but James chose not to let it cut deeper. He came to understand. Humans are not flawless beings. Anyone can lose their way. Anyone can fall. What truly matters is whether, after every fall, they have the courage to rise, and whether those left behind can find the strength to open the door to a return. And so, James, with every scar and every loss he had endured, chose to open that door. Not because Tung deserved it, but because James needed peace. He needed to close an old chapter so he could begin writing a new one. The road ahead for him and Diep was still long, but it was that very road, stormy and harsh, that forged a love no longer blind, no longer fragile, but a love that knew how to forgive, how to wait, and how to believe again. The day John was arrested, the mastermind behind all the pain, schemes, and loss, the sky seemed clearer, like after a violent storm. He was brought to justice, and the truth was finally laid bare. But more than that, James and Diep could finally breathe and know they had survived. They had made it through. No more waiting anxiously by the door. No more doubtful glances. No more sleepless nights hoping for a message that never came. James returned, not just as a man, but as someone who had learned to cherish every quiet moment beside the woman he loved. Diep rested her head on his shoulder. No more hesitation, no more fear. And in that stillness, beside each other, they felt more deeply than ever. If love is true enough, no storm can ever tear it down. The misunderstandings, the betrayals, were now only distant echoes, like the pages of an old book. What remained was the smile behind the tears, the firm grip of a hand in the crowded street, the quiet rhythm of two hearts, and a whisper shared between them. We've weathered the storm to find each other, and we'll never let go again. James and Dieppe have come to understand one profound truth. Life will always test us with challenges that seem impossible to overcome. But thanks to the strength of their love and unwavering companionship, they have made it through the darkest days. And now, there's no more room for fear or doubt. What haunts us the most isn't the enemy we see coming, but the knife in the back from someone we once called a brother. Tung's betrayal didn't just endanger James, it tore apart the bond between him and Dieppe, a love that had already weathered so many storms. This story isn't just about pain. It's a journey through regret, responsibility, and the difficult choice between justice and forgiveness. And in every heart, the same question echoes. Can we ever truly forgive when our deepest trust has been shattered? If you've ever been hurt, ever questioned forgiveness or justice, follow the channel to continue walking with James and Dieppe. A story not just of love, but of powerful lessons about humanity, choices, and the strength it takes to heal. Hit that follow button now so you won't miss the next chapters, where love refuses to surrender to fate, and two hearts find the light again after the storm.
Câu chuyện không chỉ dừng lại ở nỗi đau mà còn là hành trình đối mặt với hối hận, trách nhiệm và lựa chọn giữa công lý và tha thứ. Một câu hỏi lớn vang lên trong lòng mỗi người: liệu có thể sự thật tha thứ khi niềm tin đã bị phản bội đến tận cùng? Nếu bạn đã từng trải qua tổn thương, từng đặt câu hỏi về tha thứ và công lý, hãy theo dõi để cùng bước tiếp trên hành trình của Tim và Diệp, nơi không chỉ có tình yêu mà còn có những bài học sâu sắc về lòng người, sự lựa chọn và sức mạnh giữa của chữa lành. Nhấn theo dõi ngay để không bỏ lỡ chương trình tiếp theo, nơi tình yêu không đầu hàng số phận và trái tim một lần nữa được thắp sáng giữa giông bão.